I know colleagues or friends in the Netherlands, they're from Russia. If they lose their job, they need to go back to Russia and they get drafted in the army. They go to war. Healthcare is pretty expensive in the Netherlands, but if you have a low income, then you can get a little bit of money from the tax office. It's a right that you have. Not everyone knows that this exists. There is not really like one typical Dutch person. Some of those will be more open to new migrants than others.
Hello everyone, welcome to our podcast. And today we have a guest, Gwildor, who is a Dutch national. And I'm as an expat living in Netherlands. He is one of my friend as well and also been colleague. And today's topic is basically, which he mentioned me, that there is a lot of confusion in Netherlands about expats and what they are, who they are expats, because there are different types of categories in this. Also, why Dutch people or the government expects them to learn Dutch, and how Dutch society basically perceives them. Yeah, I think this would be quite interesting to know about these things. Gwildor, thank you very much to come to our podcast. Maybe a little bit of introduction would be helpful for the listeners.
Yes, perfect. Well, thank you for having me. Yes, my name is Gwildor. I'm 32 years old. I was born and raised in Utrecht, which is the center of the Netherlands. I moved 6 years ago to Rotterdam, which is the second city of the country. I work in IT, that's how we met. I'm also very active in politics, so volunteer work already for like 12, 13 years. So yeah, that's given me a pretty good feeling of like all the things that happen in the Dutch society, Dutch politics, etc. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Gilder, for for giving your introduction for to our viewers and listeners. Shall we start this discussing this topic with the word expat or migrant? So, what does it means actually? How there might be so many different types of expats. Maybe you go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm also very curious to hear your opinion on this, but actually for me, there is no definition of expat. There is at least not an official definition of it in the Dutch society or Dutch politics. So I looked up some numbers this morning about like immigration that's and emigration that's coming and going out of the Netherlands, and there is no official category for them. So what in society, how I see this, and when I read the news, when I talk with friends, is that most people perceive as an expat to be someone that is immigrating for work, for labor to work here in the Netherlands. So no refugees, no studies, and that is generally speaking working in like the higher segment, so more the well-paying jobs. So IT, of course, but like also yeah, there are a bunch of different categories, like also the sciences, working in like for example, the chip factory or the
Yeah.
machine producing factory in Eindhoven. That already tells me there is something wrong there, right? Because people talk a lot about expats, not a lot of people talk with expats, but there's no clear definition of who an expat is. If you compare someone, for example, there's like free labor in the entire European Union. So if you are from Italy or if you're from Spain, you can move to the Netherlands to work here, regardless of what kind of jobs you want to do. As long as you can find a job here, you can work it, right? So that also means, for example, working in a bar or as a cleaner, job that's not paying that well. There's not a lot of labor shortage there, but we don't generally call them expats. Yeah, so we have like a separate label for the people depending on their income, basically.
Okay.
It's like the self definition.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Let's come to this learning Dutch or Netherlands, why it is expectation and how it would be helpful to well integrate in the society. And later on we will also discuss about the perception of society on these expats and what are the expectation they expect. And something more about this. This would be interesting really for our viewers and for me as well personally.
The expectation. There's a good pun in there. Um,
Because people are coming into your country. At least they should follow the rule. Or rule or expectation, because you are giving them a space, place. So yeah, I shouldn't say it's only one side, but on the other side, they are also helping to boost your economy as well.
yeah,
So
definitely.
there has to
Yeah.
be a negotiation, good negotiation, not negotiation, but at least good terms.
Yeah, like it's there. There's so many facets surrounding this whole. It's a very big topic, too big to do like in one episode, I think, because there's like companies that are more willing to hire expats than they are to hire Dutch citizens. For example, in IT, we see this a lot. I wouldn't say they're more willing, but there's at least the instead of, for example, raising the salaries for Dutch people, they would rather spend that money to get people from India or from China to work here. So they do a lot of lobbying to make the rules easier for labor immigration. For example, we have the 30% ruling. That means you get a tax reduction on your income tax if you are an expat, which Dutch natives don't have that. So actually, expats that work in the Netherlands, they generally make more money than not Dutch native people. So that creates a lot of tension, of course. And yeah, when you talk about learning the language, the Netherlands is, I believe, the best English speaking country in the world for countries that don't natively speak English. So English is not an official language in European Netherlands. It is in one of the islands of the Caribbean Netherlands, but not in European Netherlands. But around 90% of the people here speak Dutch. I believe this was from a recent research, and that's way better than, for example, Germany. Denmark is comparable, Sweden is comparable, but the Netherlands is the best country, generally speaking.
I think, I mean, if you compare other countries, Sweden, Denmark, and all these, I mean, I think relatively immigrant policies are way softer. I think here, softer or more lucrative for other people to come here and work. So that's why, I mean, Netherlands has quite a lot of immigrants nowadays, and now it is also becoming a political debate as well. We
Yes,
will come to that later.
yes. It has been for a while, but you're correct. Like Denmark and Sweden have been going a bit further already for a long time on that. So what I was saying about like the level of fluency, English fluency in the Netherlands, is that you still have around 10% of population which doesn't speak English at all. Primarily older people or people from lower income, primarily people from like the country, so outside the major cities. So what you have is you have a situation here that language is becoming more and more, in my opinion, and also opinions from some of my Dutch friends, it's becoming
Hmm.
more and more of a segregation issue. There has always been segregation in the Netherlands, for example, based on wealth and income. Like the higher income neighborhoods and the lower income neighborhoods, they are segregated. Of course, immigration itself, the heritage where you come from, you have like neighborhoods with a very often heavy Moroccan or Turkish population. There's been
Hmm.
segregation there as well, but now the language itself is also becoming more and more of a segregation issue where you have the big cities, Amsterdam, Rotterdam, is becoming more and more English. In Amsterdam, it's almost you already hear more English than Dutch,
Hmm.
but in the countryside, so in the east of the country or south of the country, there's a lot of people still that don't speak English that well. And you
Hmm.
be starting to see an attitude among the people there that they don't want to come to the big cities anymore, or vice versa, because the people cannot talk with each other anymore. For example, imagine if you're like a 70-year-old elderly lady from the east of the country, and you think like I'm gonna spend a day with my grandkids who live in Amsterdam, and you go there and you go to a bar or like a cafe to have lunch together, and you cannot even order in Dutch anymore to order your food. It's
Hmm.
giving like really weird situations like this now.
Okay, let's move towards this specifically on this. As a friend, I mean, it's not directed towards our listener or viewers as not exactly for them. It's personal, I would say. Why should I learn Dutch? I mean, I would like to listen from your side. I mean, what are your points toward this?
Yeah, so for me, so first of all, Dutch is not a nice language. I find it, well, literature can be nice, but overall, I think there are more beautiful languages out there, and also languages that are easier to learn. But in generally speaking, I think that language and communication is like a core fabric to keep the society and the community that you're on together. If you're here for like less than 6 months, you're in on holidays, whatever, then it's perfectly fine. You can get very far with English in this country. But if you want to be here longer and if you want to discuss the problems that society has, or you want to help address them. You want to discuss them. It can be as simple as discussing them with friends in a bar, you know. But you should be able to read the Dutch newspapers. You should be able to meet other people within that society and talk with them to discover what concerns them, what are their opinions on the matter. You cannot keep like a society together if you don't speak the same language. And the alternative, there's an alternative course, which is that the Netherlands just decides we're going to go fully English now. That's also a possibility. The trend has been going this far already. We're becoming big parts of the country are becoming more and less bilingual. But then that's a decision that the society as a whole should make. That, okay, now we're making English an official language. So far that has not happened yet. Everyone at least tries to keep Dutch as the official language. Everyone is learning it in the lower school. And just gives a very weird situation. For example, I know a friend who lives in Amsterdam for over 20 years, and he is not able to speak Dutch yet. More than 20 years in the Netherlands. But he has a child in lower school, I think 8 or 10, something like that. And that
Hmm.
child is able to speak Dutch because they learned in the lower school. But now the child cannot speak with the parent in Dutch. They can only speak in their native language. So if they want to discuss something with the teachers, they have to do it in English because the parent doesn't speak Dutch. It's giving a lot of tension in those areas.
Yeah, I mean, I can also relate it with because I mean, same situation is mine as well as of now. Though I'm learning Dutch, not with that focus and seriousness, I would say. Maybe I will increase it. So I think I mean you gave quite a lot of good pointers, and quite I'm quite aligned with this. One of the things which I would also like to highlight as I work in IT, and if I see the current trend in lot of IT jobs nowadays, I mean, I'm seeing that Dutch is kind of mandatory and required. So this is one point. It may be, I wouldn't say that everywhere it is, but in some parts I see that people have started asking, you should know Dutch. Other than this, other point is most of the companies like ABN AMRO, ING, I should not name it, no meaning of like that, but the point is the companies of this stature, Cool Blue and all other big
The big
companies,
companies, yeah.
big companies, there it's okay, I mean just go with the English, but if you want to really open up with the larger market, so some I mean people I mean companies like 50 people, 100 people, 200 and 250 people over there, they also need softwares, data and all these things. If you want to open up those opportunities, then I think learning Dutch would be a great advantage, at least for that point of view, for
Uh,
expats.
That's a very interesting point that you make now. I've not really thought about that because I see as well that I have a lot of expat friends. A lot of them I met through IT. You know some of them.
Yeah.
They all tend to stick to those big companies that provide visa, that have a lot of IT employees, very international. For example, at Coolblue, where we both worked, 1 in 4 was Dutch, 3 quarters was international.
Hmm.
But there is a whole market out there of like smaller IT companies, like family shops, with
Yeah.
20, 30, 40 employees that are 100% Dutch, except maybe a few IT people that indeed generally have more often than not a requirement to talk Dutch. I think also what happens there is that, well, first of all, they are not able to provide visa sponsorship usually because that's pretty
Mm-hmm.
expensive. And so then because of that, like also the Dutch IT people tend to more gravitate towards those companies maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Also, they are more in the network of like recruiters and all that kinds of stuff. So yeah, indeed, definitely for your working chances, for your the amount of vacancies that you can apply to, it's definitely also great to learn the language.
And also, let me give you some idea about expats' life. When expats come here, this is a generic idea from my side. It may not be true for everyone. But what happens? Economically, you first go for saving quite a lot in initial days, and you might need some higher amount or higher salaries in initial time. For 5 years. After 5 years, we also have visa for permanently staying. Then situation also gets changed, so lot of things for expats also keeps on changing. For 5 years initially, it's required to do a job. I mean, otherwise you do not have a visa, and you have like 3 months to figure out a job. So you have this kind of danger line.
You always have this like sword over your
Yeah,
head. Yeah,
sword on your neck, and especially when you are living with family and your kids are going to school. So I mean, it's a big thing because I mean, you don't want to change their education. What's going on?
well, that's
So.
also like to one give one example on this. I
Mhm.
know like colleagues or friends in the Netherlands live here. They're from Russia, and
Mhm.
they cannot lose their job because if they lose their job, they need to go back to Russia, and they get drafted in the army. They go
Yeah.
to war. It's a horrible situation.
Yeah. So apart from this, now situation also, I mean, earlier I used to, I mean, this is my example. Maybe I should give into a podcast or not. I can't, I mean, but let me give it. So initially, when I was the only person who was working and earning. So I mean, definitely I need, I mean, those big companies which can give me a higher salaries. Now my wife also works. So I don't need to go for higher salaries. Now situation is also changing. So I mean, now I mean, I want to penetrate that market. I mean, which is quite, I mean, high in the amount. I mean, because I mean, in any country, if you talk about Fortune 500 or great companies, they might be 10, but small companies they might be 100 or thousands. So there is a bigger opportunity. But why I am not able to penetrate this market? Because I don't know Dutch. So that's why I need to know Dutch. I
Exactly.
think
Yeah.
that should be the biggest motivation. One part, I mean, this is my own understanding or what I perceive, that it's always a bit of dilemma. What does normal people? I'm not talking about the IT people specifically or the higher class people. Does the normal people think about the expats? Is it really their expectation? Please speak our language, because I mean, sometimes I have been told now, and I think it is a good thing. I mean, I should respect it. In hockey club, one of other parents, they asked me, I mean, that how long you are living here. I told him, I mean, like 6 years. So he asked me, I mean, why don't you learn Dutch? My answer was, I will prioritize it. But I mean, yes, I should prioritize it. But when to prioritize? I mean, it also, I mean, I'm also dealing with other things right now, maybe later on. So somehow this process of learning Dutch is delaying. Sometimes you might be finding struggle in your job, so you are changing your job. Sometimes you are also, I mean, like your personal situation is changing. Your wife is also coming to job. Then you are, I mean, changing your lifestyle and everything. So yeah, I mean, somehow this can, I mean, in different country when you are living, so it keeps on changing. Yeah, I mean, I'm giving a more of a statement rather than advice.
Well, that's the problem, right? It's like the Netherlands is a bit in a like a catch-22 situation in that sense because so many people speak so well Dutch here that you
Hmm.
don't really have the requirement to learn Dutch. You can get
Hmm.
along with English like just like 10, 20 years just fine. For
Hmm.
you, it's 6 years. Compared to
Hmm.
other countries, I recently went to Brazil. I nobody speaks English there. You need to be able
Hmm.
to speak a little bit Portuguese to order in a restaurant, to ask directions, all that kinds of stuff. One time I had like problems with my travel card. I couldn't check into the metro system. I tried to ask the lady who was like standing next to the stalls. I tried to ask her in English. She couldn't speak English. So I just had to figure it out how myself to how to get into the metro. But in the Netherlands, everyone speaks English quite well. So how people see this, what people feel about this is that most people are perfectly fine and more than happy to have a conversation with you in English. I think a lot
Hmm.
of people, it depends a little bit from where you are, but like in the major cities, definitely like a lot of people do a lot. They're into like international as well, so there's like parties, meetups, social events that are on English already now. And then also like other people, they are very happy to meet like people from originally outside the Netherlands or people who are currently working and living in the Netherlands. Yeah, to broaden their horizon, to meet people from different backgrounds. So a lot of people in the day-to-day like social setting, they are very happy to learn or to speak Dutch, English with you.
Hmm.
However, I do see a trend where more and more people are starting to get annoyed by the amount of English in society. all the signs on shops, a lot of them are English now. The menus in restaurants, all that kinds of stuff. And I do what I see also in among my own friends is that there's like more and more frustration bubbling up that they don't want to, they want to keep the option to be able to speak Dutch. And a lot of places they don't even have the option anymore, like for example being served in a restaurant. And indeed, there's a lot more examples now, people that are here for 5, 10, 20 years that still not be able to speak Dutch. And indeed, then you get those questions like, you're already here for so long, we can understand 1, 2 years, but you're already here
Hmm.
5 years, 10 years, and you still didn't learn Dutch. There's a lot of frustration starting there.
It's good you mentioned this. Something also popping up in my head is basically, I think, from my side, learning Dutch would be also helpful to well integrate in the society, to get the help from your neighbors, and to basically able to communicate with them. Because I see, at least in my neighborhood, somehow, I have a good connection with people. Some people can't speak English, so for them it's bit annoying. But most of the people can speak, and they also many times ask me to learn Dutch. But it's really, even in the hockey club where we go. So when we are able to speak in their language, it also becomes easier for them to speak with us, and then they are more open up to
Definitely.
us.
Yeah.
Because in general, I see, in your society structure, helping people, it's kind of ingrained, so people try to do it. So, in order to get help and support from others, even for an example, if you want to do a business and you are looking for any co-founder, just hypothetical example, but it could be also at other level as well. So then, if you want, then for any expert, it would be the best thing. That your co-founder is Dutch.
Yeah,
But how can, yeah.
definitely, like helping your neighbors, basic stuff like that. Like I think like a lot of people, I think this goes for every country, but also Dutch people, they
Hmm.
are they find it really nice if you at least try to put in the effort, if you show that you are trying. But like a lot of Dutch people, they're also so social that, well, I wouldn't say most Dutch people are not well known for how social they are. Generally, we're
Hmm.
like all said like, oh, you're cold people, but people they at least put in the effort, right? So they will switch to English if they sense that you are struggling with Dutch because their
Yeah.
English is so well, and they're like, oh, let me help you out. I'll switch to English. But if you then ask them like, no, please, I'm practicing. I want to speak
Hmm.
Dutch. Can we please stick to Dutch? Then you can just ask them directly. There's no stigma around it or something, that they were very happy to help you, and they really appreciate that you put in that effort to try to learn Dutch. So yeah, it definitely, for all the things like you said, like helping your neighbors, all that kind of stuff, it's
Yeah.
very helpful. Like as like the social integration, yeah, indeed, like making new friends, all that kinds of stuff to be able to speak the language. Another
Yeah.
example, what I also thought about, I've had it as well, maybe not with you, but with some of our friends, is dealing with the government, being able to vote, but also if you get like insurance or get some sort of letter from your taxes from the government. A lot of the times the letter will be in Dutch. Generally speaking, you are able to find the information in English as well, but not always.
Yeah.
And if you have to call them, if you have a problem with your income tax, I don't know, something like that, and you have to call the tax office, you need to be able to speak Dutch because the people at the other side of the telephone line is not always speaking English.
Yeah, yeah. Indeed. I have seen this couple of examples while dealing with visa. Applying for different kind of visas. Then, if you want to ask information, somehow, your IND department, Immigration and Naturalization department, is quite good. So they speak English. But other than this, the example which you gave in work here, how to say this?
Werkgever, belasting,
Belasting dienst, belasting
tax
dienst.
office, yes.
Yeah, UWA, UWA. So there's all these. My understanding is basically, if you know the Dutch, then you can be more powerful in this country. Actually, you know your more rights, because maybe those kind of rights doesn't exist in your country. So I would go a little bit further. Rather than not only restrict yourself within this society to learn Dutch, maybe go on one step further to learn about the constitution little bit, so that you really know what is expected from you and what are your rights. Because a lot of people, people those who are coming from different backgrounds or different countries, over there, government setups, their rights and the actual implementation of those rights policies are quite different, and here might be it is quite different. So maybe your mindset does not allow you to make up a question. You can't even make a right question to ask unless you don't understand the country, culture, language. So that's why I also think, it should be prioritized. If you want to live here or any other foreign country for a longer period of time, it's good, to learn their language. And also I think, language also connects with the culture as well, actually, because the way you say the thing, it matters. Every country or every geographic location, they nurture their own style of working. And so in order to get integrated, understanding people, how people basically respond, whether, what are the rules of the land, basically. If I give you my example, when I came from India or Asian part, so we don't have that much time concept, basically. We don't know how to even
Use the
manage the
calendar.
calendar. I think, well, one of the biggest thing, to any expat migrating to Europe, I think they start learning the how to use the calendar, because it's a kind of necessity here. But also it's a great productivity tool if you want to utilize in a right way.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting point you also make about the rights, indeed, and how the your concept of that country, the culture that you grew up with, reflects on
Mhm.
that. Like for example, the Netherlands has a very big system. There's maybe something for different episodes, but a very big system of the welfare state where you can get like a
Mhm.
lot of like supplements to your
Mhm.
income, depending on your personal situation. For example, if you are renting a house, or no, no, maybe let's go with healthcare. Healthcare is pretty
Mhm.
expensive in the Netherlands, but if you have a low income, then you can get a little bit of money from the tax office to help you pay your healthcare insurance. But the problem with that welfare, like the supplement from the tax office, is that you have to request it yourself. It's a right that you have, but you don't get it
Mhm.
automatically. So there already have the problem that not everyone knows that this exists. Not
Mhm.
everyone is able to request it because they don't have the right papers or they don't understand it. So there's a inequality there where lower income people, which are more often than not migrants,
Mhm.
they are less likely to request this money that they have a right to. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in, yeah, with like this healthcare insurance income.
Yeah, that's a very good point and good example as well. I don't know whether I have asked specifically this or not. What Dutch people think about expats?
In
What
general,
are the different? Yeah, in general, what are the different concepts? Because it's not like one. It also depends on the. Uh, there's one. There's one line: "Beauty lies in the beholder eyes." It may not be the well suited line here, but everybody sees it differently. People have different. But what are the common perceptions you have seen around?
so this is a problem, right? Because I see a lot of prejudices.
Yeah.
I also see some assumptions which are not always true. So the problem, in my opinion, that this ties back to language again, is that there's not a lot of mixture between expats and Dutch people. Like maybe if like sometimes at the office or maybe like for your example from the tennis club. But how often would you speak if you're like in within the expat bubble? How often would you speak with a Dutch person? Like maybe at the supermarket or something like that, but not that often. And likewise, a lot of Dutch people don't know that many expats, at least not well enough to talk with them regularly.
Hmm.
I know that for myself that I made a lot of expat friends through my work, but most expats were surprised that they knew like that I was their only Dutch friend basically.
Hmm.
Um, and likewise, a lot of my friends they don't have any expat friends. It's a different situation a little bit with international students, which is also a topic I wanted to touch upon
Yeah.
because I think most people don't really call them an expat, but like we started at the our start of the episode, like the term expat is not well defined. It's very nebulous. So more and more people are now maybe saying international students are expats as well. It's a little bit like hard to say. But like
Hmm.
for the international students specifically, of course, through their studies, they will meet a lot of and they mingle with a lot of expats. So, and of course, under students, there's a lot more like social life, a lot of parties, a lot of events. So I think among students specifically, there's a lot of mingling, but like on the working, like office work or that kind of stuff, that age, there's not a lot of mingling. And so to say what Dutch people think of them, it's tough. Like I would say, unfortunately, the view generally is a little bit negative. There is it's maybe discussion for another episode, but of course there's like a wide wing shift the last 10, 20 years in the Netherlands, also in Denmark and Sweden, which we mentioned, with a very anti-migration attitude. And so then a lot of like there's a lot of talk about problems which are then tied. They make the connection between immigration and those problems. For example, the housing crisis. I
Hmm.
don't agree on those on that tie, but on tying those in. But they blame immigrants basically for rising housing prices. So all of that reflects in the attitude that Dutch people have to expats. Like I also
Hmm.
said earlier, there's also a little bit like jealousy in terms of the tax income
Absolutely.
deduction they have. There's also like the feeling of like, they're getting our jobs, that kind of stuff. So unfortunately, I would say the view is a little bit negative, but
Hmm.
that's also where language again helps because then you can have a conversation and you can explain, okay, why did I migrate to the Netherlands? Why did I leave my home country? Which is, it's a huge step to do, to leave behind
Yeah.
your friends, your usually
Family.
family, your whole culture. You move the other side of the world. It's a big step to do. So you can explain them, like why did I make that choice? Why did I make that sacrifice to come here?
Yeah, that's a really very good point. I mean, if you can I mean, if first of all, if you know their language, then you can speak them, and whatever perception they have, I mean, all these kind of perception go away when we start talking.
Exactly, yeah.
So this can be explained. I mean, then I mean, slowly, this can also erase that this kind of, I wouldn't say negative, but not positive view which they
At
perceive.
least the prejudices that some people
Yeah,
might have.
prejudices. Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
but there's also I do think that a lot of Dutch people so a lot of Dutch people go on holidays. I do think that a lot of Dutch people, not everyone, but a lot, they do like meeting people from a different background. They are curious about again like where you're
Yeah.
from, what are your opinions on things, explain a little bit about your culture. That's also maybe this is also something we should have said at the start actually. Like
Hmm.
the Netherlands, there's not like one Dutch person. It's very mingled.
Yeah.
Because of course the Netherlands is a former, well, in some ways still is a colonial power. We had a lot of former colonies like Suriname, Indonesia. So a lot of people from there migrated to here. I also mentioned Turkish and Moroccan. A lot of labor immigrants came to the Netherlands from there. There is not really like one typical Dutch person. It's like a very diverse background, and of course some of those will be more open to new migrants and meeting people, expanding their worldview basically than others.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting. Interesting.
I think in the United States they call it like a melting pot. It's like you have
Melting.
like a salad bowl and you have like different like native people from there,
Yeah, yeah,
like different
yeah, yeah.
nationalities, and then you stir a bit and then you have like
Yeah.
because like for example like Amsterdam and Rotterdam they have like 180 nationalities I think.
Mm. Yeah, I mean it's quite. I mean, I think, I mean, within Europe, if you see, I mean, Netherlands in this case keeps a very unique or unique perspective in terms of welcoming immigrants. If you see, I mean, all other countries rest in the Europe. I mean, UK is not anymore part of them, part of it, and UK is not even, I would say, is a really good economy as of now. The way and where they are moving towards. But rest of the Europe, Netherlands is one of the best place to live. This is what I think.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. So there's one more point I wanted to make, and the perception that ties into like expats or like immigrants from that come from work. I want to talk a
Mhm.
little bit about refugees, people that come from Ukraine, for example, or Syria, like fleeing from a war, or they are homosexual and they are fleeing from a country where that is forbidden. roughly, I have some numbers in front of me. So roughly 10% of the immigrants are refugees. So around 30,000 in 2023. That's
Hmm.
not entirely correct because there was also 37 refugees from Ukraine, but that's actually put in a separate category because it's Ukraine. There is a big refugee community as well, but it's not the majority. The majority is labor immigration. But the problem with refugees is that they are not allowed to work until they get like the permit that they can stay here, which can take a long time. I think up to 2 years, sometimes even longer.
Hmm.
So for those first, I don't know exactly how long, but for the first long time that they are in a refugee camp, a
Hmm.
refugee shelter, they are not allowed to work. They also cannot learn, well, they can try to learn it on themselves, but there used to be a system where the government would provide Dutch language classes to them. But a few years ago, they privatized this. So now they build like up a network where private companies can provide Dutch language classes to refugees, and those private companies can charge a maximum of 6,000 euros for those classes. But that
Hmm.
whole privatization has led to a situation where all those classes are now worse quality, they're more expensive, and
Hmm.
if a refugee is not allowed to work because they don't have the residence permit yet, then they can also not pay for those classes. So they can basically only start their language classes until they after they got the permit. Even there's like a distinction between the expat, the immigration worker, and the refugee.
It's a quite critical thing. I mean, if you are moving to some place and you can't work, and 1 or 2 years you are spending to get your work permit, but it is difficult for them. I can
Yeah,
empathize a little bit at least.
yeah, definitely.
And
And like also, I'm
mm,
a little bit annoyed by it. Like this touches me a little bit emotionally because we talked about like the shift in perception of
mm,
immigrants in the Netherlands and like how people are blaming, for example, the housing crisis or like labor shortage or what have you on
mm,
immigrants. They blame less the working immigrants, but they blame mostly the refugees.
okay.
And yeah, like if you already have to flee from a war and then you come to a society that doesn't accept you because the people that you are part of that society think that you are stealing a house from them, something like that, or stealing a job from them. That's like a very tough situation, and you cannot even learn the language, you cannot even work yet. It's a very weird situation.
Mm, indeed. Thank you, our viewers and listeners, for today's podcast. This was the first episode of this kind of series with Gilder, and we expect many more coming. Maybe if you have some suggestions, you can write down to which topic about you want to listen more, or maybe if you have any feedback, you can give us, so that we can increase the quality of our podcast. Thank you, viewers. Signing off here. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.